are often excluded from recess. So we feel this is really an equity issue. We also know that kids in lower income schools often have less recess, and we know that boys, especially boys of color, are withheld from recess at the highest numbers. So we really saw this as an equity issue that we wanted to address, and we couldn't have passed this law without, lots of different parents and supporters coming out to say that they agree. So yeah, so I'm sort of doing a outreach now. We did the hard work of passing the law, but actually we need to keep moving forward to make sure that the law is implemented. And what we have learned from talking to advocates in other states that have passed laws a little bit earlier than us a few years ago, including Arizona and some other states, they found that when schools are not well aware of the new law, it often doesn't get upheld. And it often comes down to parents sort of saying, hey, my kids should be getting 30 minutes of recess, and no, you can't withhold recess. So we want to make sure that parents are super aware of the law. We're also, of course, going to be doing outreach to schools themselves. And so there's a few different ways that parents can get involved if they would like to help. One is that there's sort of a unique part of this law is that
I'm so sorry. This is Yana Linnea. I apologize, but we turned on the recording really late. So we kind of missed the gist of it. Would you mind just saying which law and just kind of a sentence so that we can still use this part for?
Yeah. So I'm Linnea Westerland, talking about the recess law. And this is the law there was a bill that became a law last year. It was signed in May, and it will guarantee school recess in elementary school, 30 minutes of school recess. Um, and so just talking about some ways that parents can get involved. So as part of the law, individual school boards are actually going to have to meet and adopt a new model policy that is going to be set by the Washington State School Directors Association. The School Directors Association will have to include in the language that we put into the bill. But the way this is going to happen is it's actually going to go to individual school boards later this spring after this model policy is set, probably around April. And then school boards will have to open it up for discussion, and they have to adopt at a minimum those requirements, but they could do more. And so we would love to have parents that are willing to, show up at their school board. So for all of us, that's Seattle Public Schools, and just make sure that people understand that this is important and that we care about this issue. And, Seattle Public Schools was already doing probably 30 minutes, but not all these other aspects. I know I saw lots of withholding and physical activity as punishment, like lap running at my children's elementary school. So we know that these things are still happening. The other thing that we would love to have help with is just making sure that individual schools are aware of the law. We're going to provide free flyers and resources on our website, and I'll put that into the chat so everyone can have that. It also has information about all the language that's in the new law, so you can see all of the different pieces. So we would love help like distributing flyers, making sure that schools, parents are aware of it, even if it's maybe just putting on your agenda in September, just saying like, hey, new recess law, please let us know if your school is not complying, and we would be willing to help with that. And again, individual PTAs really have a lot of power in making sure that these things happen. And then the last thing is that I have a parent information meeting coming up in a couple of weeks. It's on Monday, January 29th at lunchtime, so 12 to 1. Super casual Zoom conversation. I just want to have a place where parents can come ask questions. We can share some of this information. We can start to distribute the flyer. And my sort of long-term interest is finding parents that really care about the issue of play and sports and physical activity that might want to help inform the King County Play Equity Coalition's work as sort of like a little bit of a parent kind of advisory ad hoc committee, possibly meeting just once a quarter or something. So really wanting to connect with parents who are out there, doing the work in the community and are the ears to what's happening in schools and what kids need. So yeah, so I will put those things in the chat, and happy to answer any questions, but that's kind of all I was going to prepare. I know you probably have a very busy agenda. So
that's great. Thank you, Linnea. That's really good information. Glad to hear about it. Hate that recess is pulled away as something. Does anybody have any questions? We've got some stuff in the chat.
I have a question. Lene, what was the original ask? Like, if we were to request more, what was the original ask for the bill? What was that amount of minutes?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. We wanted 45 minutes, which is actually what I believe school teachers in Seattle Public Schools wanted during the last couple rounds of bargaining. And we had support. So we worked really, really closely with SEA on this, with WEA and SEA on this bill. They were fully on board with 45 minutes and wanted the 45 minutes. We ultimately, legislators made, we had to go down to 30 minutes. So that was a big disappointment because 45 minutes would have made it one of the strongest laws in the country. 30 is still great, but as you know, sitting for 6-7 hours a day for so many kids, that's not developmentally appropriate. So we would love to see 45 minutes. If we could get them to adopt that in Seattle Public Schools
Right.
model policy, that would be amazing. The other thing I would say is that there's a little wiggle room left in the withholding. We asked for a ban and we didn't get it. We got a like strongly discourage. So that would be another piece to ask for, is like, let's ban withholding recess for academic work or for behavior issues. And we do have an exception there. Like if a child is causing like harm to themselves or, other children to a certain, like level that there needs to be like some way to handle that situation. But otherwise, like we don't want kids losing recess to like make up schoolwork or do a test or because they're, not behaving in the classroom, because we know from so much research and teachers that just backfires. Kids need recess no matter what. It's as important as lunch. We would never withhold lunch. So those are some of the messages that we use. That's a super good question. Thanks.
And Amy, did you get your question answered?
I got it answered. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Great.
You're reading each other's minds. Yeah, thanks for that.
Okay, well, that's wonderful. Thanks, Lene. It's encouraging as we're in Advocacy Week to hear about success and also recognize what it takes to roll out the law once the law's passed.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
I'm going to stay for a few more minutes. I would like to hear the other advocacy updates as well.
Oh yeah, great too. Well, and we're going to do now is actually I'm going to switch over. So I'm going to welcome Trinity, and also while we were talking, so Trinity Covington with Seattle Promise, and you're with the city, correct, Trinity? Or is it with a different?
I'm with Seattle Colleges.
Seattle Colleges, okay. And then Caleb Perkins is also joining us, and the Executive Director for Career and College Readiness at Seattle Public Schools. So Trinity, I gave you co-host, or you can share. Do you want to drive your slides? Would you like one of us to do that?
Yeah, no, I can share. That's great. I also want to give Melody a chance to introduce herself. She is also here.
Okay.
The Executive Director for Seattle Promise.
Oh, of course. Thank you, Melody.
Hi, friends. Thanks for having us.
Okay, looking forward to this.
Go ahead and share my screen. So my name is Trinity Covington, and I'm an outreach specialist with Seattle Promise. I support seniors at Ballard High School, Cleveland High School, and Middle College. And tonight we'll just give you an overview of the Seattle Promise program and some of the different requirements. So Seattle Promise is a college scholarship and success program. We provide up to 2 years or 90 credits of free tuition at one of the Seattle colleges. So that's North Seattle College, Seattle Central, or South Seattle College. And all seniors in Seattle Public Schools are eligible for Seattle Promise. There's no GPA requirement, income requirement, residency requirement, anything like that. As long as a student is a current senior in Seattle Public Schools, they are eligible for the program. And beyond tuition support, Seattle Promise also provides support in a lot of other areas. During a student's senior year, they are supported with completing their college applications. So that's the Seattle Promise application, and then also their application to one of the Seattle colleges. They also are supported with completing their financial aid application. So either the free application for federal student aid or the Washington state application for student application for financial aid. And then once they start at Seattle colleges, they're supported by retention specialists. And retention specialists are academic advisors who work specifically for Seattle Promise, and they support students in making sure that they know which classes to take for their program and help them with planning to transfer and with exploring different career options post-graduation. So again, this is our current team of outreach specialists. We work at the different Seattle public high schools and support students with completing applications, applying for financial aid, and then registering for Readiness Academy and Summer Bridge, which are a couple of other deadlines or milestones that students have to complete during their senior year. And then once they start at Seattle colleges, they will work with a retention specialist, and they serve as an academic advisor. They support with choosing courses and building educational plans, and again, with transfer planning and career exploration. And the Seattle Promise Scholarship can be used at one of the Seattle colleges. So that's North Seattle College in Northgate, Seattle Central College in Capitol Hill, or South Seattle College in West Seattle. And students at Seattle colleges can choose from over 100 different programs in 8 different areas of study. So there's lots to explore. We encourage students to explore the Seattle Colleges website to see all the different programs that are available, and to also connect with their outreach specialist who can help them explore and learn about the different programs. There are a couple of different ways students can choose to use their Seattle Promise Scholarship. So they can choose to complete a transfer degree, which means that they would complete an associate's degree while at Seattle colleges and then transfer to a 4-year university to complete their bachelor's degree. Seattle Promise has worked with different universities throughout the state to build out a couple different transfer pathways to make the transfer process easier. So at UW, there is the Path to UW, where students get support while they're still at Seattle colleges with filling out their application to UW, and also get support with figuring out what are the right classes that they should be taking to complete their degree. They also have access to free classes at UW that support them with the academic transition. At Seattle University, if students decide to transfer there, they are guaranteed admissions if they graduate Seattle colleges with a 3.0 GPA or higher. They also have access to a full tuition scholarship if they're college bound eligible as well. So those are some of the transfer pathways. There are others as well, and outreach specialists can share more information about that. So students can complete a transfer degree, or they can complete a professional technical program. And those are programs like culinary arts, automotive maintenance, welding, things like that, where students get the skills that they need while at Seattle colleges and are ready to enter the work field once they graduate. So at North Seattle College, there are the 3 transfer degrees available: Associates of Science, Associate of Arts, or Associates of Business. And then these are the professional technical programs that are available at their campus. At Seattle Central College, they also have the 3 transfer associate degrees and the following professional technical programs. And
So
South
this is Yana. In case we have people are reading the closed captioning, would it be okay to read them out loud and just for access?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Okay, so at North Seattle College, they have the following professional technical programs: fire science, early childhood education, emergency medical, technical, electronics, nursing, pharmacy technician, and real estate. At Seattle Central College, they have Associate of Science transfer degree, Associate of Arts transfer degree, and Associate of Business transfer degree. The professional technical programs are Business Technology Management, Creative Arts and Design, Culinary, Education and Human Services, Healthcare, IT Web Programming, Maritime, and Wood Technology. Seattle Central College also offers a few bachelor degrees, community health and education, dental hygiene, healthcare services management, applied behavioral science, and respiratory care. At South Seattle College, there's the Associate of Science transfer degree, Associate of Arts transfer degree, and Associate of Business transfer degree, and the following professional technical programs: automotive technology, aviation maintenance, culinary arts, landscape horticulture, heavy diesel mechanic, and welding. Beyond the resources that students get in the Seattle Promise program, they also have access to all the different resources available through Seattle colleges. And that includes tutoring support, counseling services, disability services, career services, and more. And if students are interested in applying to or being a part of the Seattle Promise program, there are a few different milestones that they need to meet during their senior year. And I'll speak about each of these a little bit more in depth. But the first milestone is to complete the Seattle Promise application and the Seattle Colleges application. The second is to complete their financial aid file. Then students attend Readiness Academy. Over the summer, they complete their financial aid file, and then in September, they attend Summer Bridge. So again, the first deadline, which is coming up very soon, is to submit the Seattle Promise application and the Seattle Colleges application. And this is something that an outreach specialist can help students do at their school. This is just a note for students who are in Running Start. We'll have a few different application workshops that are coming up. On Wednesday, January 24th from 12:30 to 1:30, there will be in-person workshops on each campus, and lunch will be provided. At Central, the workshop will be in BE 3175. At North, it will be in IB 1308. And at South, it will be in CAH 202. And then on Wednesday, January 31st, from 12:30 to 1:30, there will be a virtual workshop as well. So if you know Running Start students who might be interested in Seattle Promise or have questions, we encourage them to attend one of these workshops.
This is Yana. We also have the PowerPoint slides in our folder, and I'm assuming that these links are clickable. So Trinity, we would like to share this if that's okay, and with people so that they can have that instead of note as for their notes. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine
Great.
with me.
Trinity, this is Cheryl Lynn. Or did you have more slides?
Oh, I do, yes.
Okay, I'll let you finish.
I do want to note for Running Start students, if students are in Running Start and interested in Seattle Promise, we encourage them to connect with their outreach specialist early. Running Start students are eligible for the scholarship, but Seattle Promise covers 2 years or 90 credits up to the first degree or certificate. So if Running Start students are on the path to earn their associates by the time they graduate high school, then Seattle Promise might not be the best pathway for them. But again, it's really important that Running Start students connect with their outreach specialist and their Running Start education manager to talk about where they're at credit-wise, what programs they're interested in, and if the classes that they're currently taking are eligible for that program, and see if Seattle Promise is a good option for them. After students submit their applications to Seattle Promise and Seattle Colleges, they complete the financial aid application, so either the FAFSA or the WASFA, and that is due by April 30th. And students are supported by their outreach specialists at the schools. Seattle Promise also offers different info sessions and workshops throughout January and February for students to attend and get support as well. In the spring and in the summer, students attend a couple of in-person events. So the first event that they attend is Readiness Academy, which occurs in late May and in early June. This is when students get to come to campus and they meet their retention specialist, so the academic advisor that will be supporting them while they're at Seattle colleges. And they also have an opportunity to learn how to register for classes. Over the summer, if students need to turn in any additional documentation to the financial aid office at their school, they're supported by their outreach specialist to complete those steps. And then in September, students attend Summer Bridge, which is a one-day orientation where students get to meet some different professors that are on campus, learn about different resources that are available to them, and take a tour, things like that. And then in the fall, they start as a full-time student, typically is the expectation. Students are able to go part-time or defer a quarter with Seattle colleges. They still need to meet all of the milestones during their senior year. So all of those things I just talked about. And then in the summer, they would work with their retention specialist to complete a form to either request part-time status or to defer a quarter. I do want to note if students defer a quarter, it's important to know it does count against the total amount of time that they have in the program. So they start with 2 years and they defer a quarter, that goes down to a year and maybe 2 quarters or 3 quarters, depending on if they're taking classes over the summer or not. So it's definitely possible and still able to, doable and still able to get your associate's degree, but encourage students to talk with their retention specialist about that if that is something they're considering. For students who have a 504 or an IEP plan, we encourage them to connect with their outreach specialists early, and we can support them with getting connected with the Disability Services office on campus. That is the end that is the end of my slides, but I will pass it to Caleb in case there's anything that he would like to add.
This is Cheryl Lynn. I would love to hear what the connection is, or what kind of a bridge there is right now in terms of making sure that students with IEPs and 504s know that there is some support for them. And I will also, I'll take just that question first.
And that question is to me, I assume. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, I assume that the Seattle Promise isn't the one that it's really about how the colleges, I'm sorry, about how Seattle Public Schools is really
Supports
working
all students. Yeah.
Yeah.
So first of all, thank you very much for letting me join you. This is Caleb Perkins, Executive Director for College and Career Readiness, and I've been with Seattle Public Schools since 2017. And I want to give huge praise to Trinity and all the folks at Seattle Colleges who have made Promise so strong in terms of actually connecting with students and figuring out all the different barriers that sometimes get in the way. And I think they have particular skill. So Trinity, could you say the names of the high schools again you support? Cleveland?
Cleveland, Ballard, and Middle College.
So there's just one group of folks, but they're just a really critical group in terms of your question, Sherilyn, in terms, that these are folks who are working in our high schools to make sure that, at least from the Promise perspective, which connects to other opportunities in terms of support around financial aid and support around getting ready during that senior year to apply to post-secondary opportunities. But more broadly than Promise, I mean, the good news it's mainly just good news, but the idea that Promise has done such a good job of getting everybody's attention that we use that as an opportunity to inform people of lots of different options. And as Trinity shared, the connection to UW. But in addition to that, I think one of the things that we're trying to do a better job on is this thing called the High School and Beyond plan that I'm sure many of you have had some experience, or I think it's come up at these meetings before. This is my third meeting here. So again, thanks for the repeat invite. And but how it's supposed to work is that starting in 6th grade, all students begin to really start formally reflecting on what their interests are and how that connects to post-secondary opportunities, including Seattle Promise. And we've tried to do a better job partnering in particular with Ivory Stewart and the special ed department to make sure those high school and beyond plans are connecting with our students with IEPs, and in that way, to your point, Sherilyn, that they're learning about a range of options. We have still a lot of work to do in that space, but that's one critical component to try to make sure that we're thinking about indicator 14 and all the requirements related to students with IEPs. And of course, those who work in things like the Bridges program have even more expertise. But that's an initial answer. I'd love to tackle other questions if there are others who have interest. And there's Melody. Hi, Melody.
This is Sherilyn again. Oh, Melody, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just was going to add to Dr. Perkins' response that we also have, in the last couple of years, added a question to the Seattle Promise application asking students if they are interested in learning more about the accommodation options or process from our access/disability services offices. And that has been from my perspective, at the colleges, that's been a really helpful tool for students to self-disclose that they're interested in learning more, and has given us a clearer pathway to more proactively connect students with the access or disability service offices at their intended college as well. And that has come from both from feedback from actually one of these meetings a couple of years ago, and also from our partners at Seattle Public Schools saying, be helpful to give students the ability to a little earlier and a little more easily, say for themselves that they're interested in learning more and just understanding the process.
This is Sherilyn. Thank you, Melody. That's great to know. I do know in terms of just looking at, my oldest, so I've got I guess a senior at the UW who is a Seattle Promise grad who transferred in, would be a junior, but she actually had gotten, because she was running star at Seattle Promise and then transfer. And I sing the praises of Seattle Promise, at least for students who are, she did not have an IEP or 504. Unlike her brother, who has been in mostly a self-contained or a segregated classroom most of his life, and who has a very keen interest in the culinary arts, which is where I would look at both where the career or the technical education elements and those, because those are some tremendous programs there. Is there maybe work down the road, or is there work underway now to make some of those programs, or make all of those technical programs maybe more friendly to people who have maybe cognitive impairments that would not necessarily be the Running Start students, or that might have full intellectual but also have the different challenges that go on with some of the social and emotional managements?
So this is Caleb Perkins again from Seattle Public Schools. Great question. And what I would say broadly, students with IEPs and students without IEPs, we're trying to make many more opportunities for students to understand the career connections. As it happens, tomorrow there's a board meeting, as maybe many of you know, and they'll be voting on our CTE STEM plan, which speaks to that, to trying to ensure all students, including students with IEPs, have robust access to a variety of CTE pathways. I will also just give another shout out to Seattle colleges that I know that we've connected a few times on individual students with IEPs about interest in particular programs. And it was remarkable that there are folks there in Seattle colleges who are willing to reach out and really provide kind of walking folks through that exact kind of what program matches. Now, I think what you're alluding to, Sherilyn, is that there's some discussion that some of you have been a part of with Seattle Promise potentially being part of a future city levy that will come up in a few years. There is interest among some that I've been in rooms with, including folks in this call, about expanding the program, about making sure that the program is maybe has even more supports. Take as an example, like the Bellevue College example of that. That would take more funding, which is not out of the question, but it is something that I think if there's interest, this is the time when folks are starting to begin to plan obviously with DEAL, the Department of Education and Early Learning taking the lead on that, but I do want to acknowledge that that's a way we could shape the future in more specific ways.
I definitely want to keep up on top of that. Both Bellevue and Highline also does quite a bit of work that, you know, a lot of enthusiasm.
Agreed.
Just looking through some of the chat, Cheryl General brought up a good one. How are you reaching students at NPAs, non-public agencies? So schools that maybe, yeah.
Exactly. So again, I think there's an area for improvement. Specifically, what we're doing, we being my college and career readiness team, is working with our special ed team to hire a particular a counselor, a part-time counselor, to work specifically with students in NPA programs. That covers any number of things, including high school beyond planning, transcript reviews, post-secondary, but that's an ongoing piece that we're collaborating on. I think that's the short answer, is those students deserve counseling services as well. And that's where we do a lot of our post-secondary guidance.
And I would just add that once Seattle colleges and once the Seattle Promise program is aware of who those students are, then we have an outreach specialist who one of their assigned areas to support specifically is our students who are at the MPAs placed by SPS.
This is Sherilyn. Well, thank you. That's good to hear. It sounds like one of the big things is the silos of trying to get information shared, which actually goes back to our earlier presentation about making sure that schools know that recess is required to be at least 30 minutes long. Wish I had some suggestions to offer, or it's just that advocacy step by step. It's really a challenge. What maybe Melody or Trinity, actually Trinity, maybe what have you found to be very helpful in terms of getting a student kind of to connect and click with Seattle Promise?
Yeah, I think it just takes time, and I think having outreach specialists in schools is really helpful. And so we are there pretty much from the beginning of the school year until about the end of May. And so they have that opportunity to come and check in with somebody, you know, every week if they need to, and get that deep support in addition to getting, you know, text reminders and emails and all of that to help make sure that they stay on track. So I think building that relationship with their outreach specialists is really helpful.
And this is Sherilyn again, is that really connected through the school counselor, or how does the student find out about that the outreach specialist is either on campus or going to be on campus?
Yeah, I think there's a few different ways, and how each outreach specialist shares that out is specific to their school cultures as well. But as students apply, we make sure to reach out to each student and let them know that we're there. For me, like, I have flyers on all of my desks at my schools that tell students exactly when I'm going to be there, and if I'm not there, that they can text me or that they can email me. So that's sort of sharing. But I think really the outreach specialist does that main work of reaching out to students and making sure that they know that they're there to support them, and continually doing that.
And I think it's been said, but just to underscore that, like, the Seattle Promise, is it about half of last year's seniors applied at some point?
Yes, just over half.
So I mean, it's not perfect, obviously, but it's an enormous success rate for such a relatively new program, and so that's where I hope we all, including especially myself, think of the ways to leverage that. That folks like Trinity have done such a great job of getting access to it. So how do we connect to all of the Trinities, if you mind, being a plural there, in terms of reaching out to getting access to our students? I see Yana. How are you?
Hello, this is Yana. I do have some questions if I can, but I can't raise my hand for some reason here. Also, it could be just me. So I do want to bring up, and thank you, Nathaniel, for sharing your thoughts. Yes, we do want to we do have some expectations for all students, but I think that I do want to respond to what you said, that the students are expected to advocate for themselves a great deal. Obviously, this may be, I'm just quoting, obviously this may be a challenge for some students and I'm not going to talk about your instructor. You are welcome to speak, but I will say that even my highly capable student with disability is not at a place that he would self-advocate, which is why he's had self-advocacy goals on his IEP from the very beginning. That just tells you about the effectiveness of the IEP also. But I want to say that expectation, yes, we want high expectations, but I think there needs to be a more embedded support, which I can attest to the lack of support for my disabled student from the counseling staff at the school. Expectation of when you need something, you reach out. For some kids, it just doesn't happen. They don't have the ability. So that's I think a big piece that we've been talking with Director Perkins about also, and just kind of connecting the dots there with the departments to collaborate to really explain and educate their counselors to know how to accommodate, how to really be more, provide more individual support. I want to acknowledge that we do know from Brian Day that we have 1 to 500 ratio, 500 student to 1 counselor, which is kind of unbelievable, right? So it is hard, and it does require a lot of creativity here. And we have had Mr. Day also contact us and just kind of try to figure out how to make the change. So I do want to say that we're going to have him as a guest in one of our future meetings, just a little plug-in.
Great.
Thank you. Yeah, so my question, I'm sorry, was really, what is the guidance for school counselors in kind of connecting to the Seattle Promise and you know, how to make this happen? Because as you know, as a pretty frustrated parent, I've been emailing you plenty to say we should have known in 10th grade, in 11th grade, right? And not to rush applications for colleges, you know, 11:59 last night because it was cutoff date, right? 11:59 and didn't get to submit one because he was too late because of the lack of support. And between 3 adults supporting this adult student, it still didn't get done. So, you know, this is a really big piece we need to know. What is the expectation of the staff? Because my expectations are going off of what the OSBI guidance is. And if I'm not seeing it, what is there if that expectation isn't met? What should parents do?
Well, broadly, I mean, there are so many, you spoke to the large caseloads. So that makes, you know, what if you were to get into the details of what every student needs, and then you match it up to the caseloads, you quickly exceed that one individual. And so I just want to acknowledge that there's no explaining that away. What I think, you know, where I get hopeful is, and I hope you don't mind me referencing you, Trinity, but I imagine you and the other outreach specialists, this is what I hear, have been skillful in developing relationships with the school staff, becoming effectively sort of embedded with the school staff, and therefore able to think about how we expand the level of support for students. There's also the idea that some high schools have advisories, and they're trying to use that group of educators to also expand support. None of those are perfect answers to your point, Jana, and certainly feeling the deadline of January 15th, I assume was, yeah, that again, I don't think that's going to meet every single need. The other thing that I'll share is that it came up recently, how do counselors respond to all the requests for writing letters of recommendation? And again, this is just one example. And so we had a head counselor meeting, and what was great is that the more veteran head counselors shared a number of the systems that they had developed and the kind of communications that they had rolled out, even talking to rising seniors when they're juniors in the spring to kind of get them ready. So we're trying to share those kinds of best practices because, again, to just say everybody's going to support all 500 students with, or whatever the ratio is too much. But anyway, not to keep bringing you back up to Seattle Promise, I do think it's wonderful that we have these additional great staff members who have been able to connect and broaden the group of support. But sounds like from your experience, Yana, there's still more work to be done.
Thank you. I also
That's
want
a
to make
lot. I
That is-
do want to ask one question about that. Sorry to interrupt, Sherilyn.
Yeah.
So is there any legislature or any rulemaking or anything that anybody who, of any of the experts who came tonight could share with us that we could support? Because I think, as you know, legislative session is in full speed and it's a short one. So we would like to, if you know of any sort of
See.
support we could provide, we
Yeah.
are happy to do that.
Well, I probably owe you a formal answer, and I don't know if Sherilyn or others are more connected than I am, because I know, like, for example, Seattle Public Schools has a formal advocate in Olympia so I need to make sure our ducks in a row. I'll say things that I'm paying attention to. There's the new financial aid piece that we're seeing from Olympia that we just want to we're keeping an eye on, making sure that's not overcomplicating things. And I'm looking to Melody and Trinity to educate me on what to worry about there and maybe what to advocate, because we certainly don't want to make that harder than what it currently is, which is some of the early reports. On the K-12 side, there's a lot of focus on what the State Board of Education is talking about in terms of waivers for certain graduation requirements, that extending the pandemic related waivers one more year. Again, I won't give you the formal statement, but we're certainly want to hear more about that, because we think many of our students could use more options while still balancing the need for readiness. So those are two things that I'm keeping an eye on in Olympia, but I bet you all know the list of bills better than I do. I probably should do my homework there.
This is Sherilyn. I do believe there's also an effort again to try and extend the Seattle Promise approach to the state.
Yes, Melody just told me about that.
Yeah, and in terms of that, then actually making sure that we emphasize that there's multiple intersectionalities, and students with
Yes.
disabilities, whether they're the twice exceptional or students with developmental disabilities, somewhere in between, are all important. Sala, I hope I'm getting your name. You want to ask your question?
Hi, yes, thank you so much. And yes, that was correct. This is Sala. My kid is actually nowhere near being ready to graduate, but I do work at UW, and one of the things that I'm curious about is how Seattle Promise might be supporting parents. I kind of noticed that, like, parents of first gen students, of BIPOC students, of students who, may have been working full time before they, graduated high school. Often those are the students who are not asking for help because they can be overly like independent or hyper independent because of just like overlapping identities and circumstances. So I'm just kind of curious, Trinity, if you could share some insight on like what kind of support there is for parents, especially given that this is focused on students with IEPs and 504s.
Yeah, I can speak to like an individual level of what I do to support the parents that I work with, which comes up more so around financial aid season and supporting them with getting those applications done. And so part of that is just being available to folks, being open to have virtual meetings with people during the day and after school, having workshops for folks at different times that are hopefully more accessible to them. And then more so relying on students to be able to tell me if their parents will need support as well, and then being able to support them through that. So for example, I have a student I was working with today who is able to bring their parent tomorrow to school so that we can complete the financial aid application together. So having access to students and having that relationship with them so that we're able to find ways to support the student. But those are just my individual ways of connecting with parents.
I would add, in addition to the individual support that the outreach specialist team is able to provide to students and the caregivers, adult supporters in a student's life, we additionally on some maybe broader stroke things, we additionally ask on the Promise application, we ask students if there is a parent or adult supporter in their life who they want to receive updates related to their Seattle Promise process and or progress. And that has felt really effective. We will text parents or caregivers, whoever the student is giving us permission to include along the way. And that's been really helpful, I think, for us as a program, but more importantly for students to, have this structure of caring adults in their life, all, us wrapping around together to help the student access and enter and then succeed in college. So things, small things from texting parents just to let them know, hey, this reminder, this deadline, this thing is due. When we are working on financial aid, that we're letting students and parents know that this particular milestone requires you can't just do it in one sitting together. So, start working on it now, and reminding parents who is the outreach specialist for their student that's assigned at that high school where their student is enrolled, letting them know here's how to contact that outreach specialist if you have questions or concerns. We also will, especially related to financial aid, we will invite parents to the workshops. And we have found that sometimes students are busy, seniors are busy, and they may not be able to attend, but the parent sometimes can. And we make space for that and are intentional to make space for that so that the parent, has all the information needed so that they as a family can work through the steps together, when they are available. That continues into when the student is enrolled at Seattle colleges. The language that we use with parents gets adjusted slightly because of FERPA law, but we'll continue to text parents as long as they will allow us, and not, do like stop or unsubscribe. We'll continue to let them know, like, hey, your student received an important email. Make sure, nudge your student to check their email, or encourage your student to check in with their retention specialist, whatever that might look like. We also, historically, pre-pandemic, we had been piloting and scaling up parent sessions at some of those event milestones that Trinity was outlining earlier. So Readiness Academy and Summer Bridge, having a session where parents and other adult supporters in the student's life could come and join, and celebrate with their student that you're going to college. And we know that whole families go to college. I mean, the student might be the one doing the thing, but it's a whole family affair, and we want to celebrate that. It's really a big deal. And parents have different questions what their student has about the process and what this is going to look like, and what are the support offices that are available at Seattle colleges, and how do we access those supports, and what are some additional funding spaces or additional student support offices like tutoring. How do you get involved with tutoring, or a work study job, etc. And so that also has been helpful. It is something that we're continuing to refine what those sessions look like based on parent feedback. So continuing to refine that. I think we're learning from parent feedback that Summer Bridge has felt like better timing for them to be involved in that. Again, is the required milestone that happens a couple weeks in September, a couple weeks right before the quarter begins for their student. That has felt to some parents who've given us feedback like better, just in time information for them. So we're continuing to adjust and be nimble in our programming so that parents can be included.
This is Yana. I'm gonna speak for that. So I just want to put something in the chat that's a link to Washington Administrative Code, which is a really you can take it. I took that code once I hunted it down, and I put it in a form. I also am happy to share my form. This is part of what Melody was saying, that that there's some limitations to FERPA. Well, even for students who who don't need guardianship and more support, there are options in Washington State, which is great, which is called the supported decision making. And therefore you are, as a parent of your adult student, you can just provide support for decisions, right? And that the student is learning to make decisions and become more independent. And from my experience of having a student who is incredible in math and many other ways, but doesn't relay information, or that is very indecisive and doesn't know how to ask or doesn't ask. It's been really great to have, so you can just take this form and fill it out. It could just be, basically you are the official supporter of your child, the appointed supporter, and your child or adult child is to sign, and then you can have either two people sign the same document, or you can take it notarized. I went to BECU and had it notarized by the notary public, and then we added on a release of information form, and so that, and we shared it with, we meaning either my son with my support or me with him, in copy of that the documentation. I would send it out to, or we would send it out to the colleges and to the school, even Seattle Public School staff, so that they knew that the decisions are going to involve a parent and they, because my kid is willing to just agree to anything and then be upset about it later. I'm sorry, sorry. So then, this is a great way to kind of remind staff, I mean, remind families that they still can be and should be involved, so that there is a softer landing for their kids for college, right? And I'm hoping that, Caleb, you could promise us that this would be more widely distributed to counselors to encourage families to do that, because I find that while IEP teams include counselors for students with transition plans, it didn't come up. I just read anything and everything that comes my way. So that's how I found out. And I asked about the decision-making, supported decision-making, maybe 15 times. And then I eventually did a few searches. So I really hope that this is going to be more broadly shared information.
I'm happy to commit to sharing for what it's worth. And I'll be hearing from them tomorrow. A number of them are coming to the board meeting. But we're starting a work group with some of our counselors to try to figure out some of the bigger issues. So I'm happy to bring it to that group.
That's great. Thank you so much.
And this is Charlene. It's good to know about. I do appreciate knowing that supported. I had a question, which I'm actually also going to use as a shameless plug for the special education PTSA. And my question is, as we have developed our guide to special education in Seattle Public Schools, and we've made it available in 10 languages, is Seattle Promise support available in multiple languages and other formats for deaf, hard of hearing, blind, visually impaired?
I can start to answer and then I'll let Melody add on. We do provide some interpretation support. So during the application season, we'll have interpreted application workshops in multiple languages. I don't know all of them, but most of the popular languages that are spoken in Seattle Public Schools, and students have access to that. If we know that a student will need interpretation support, I think that's something that can be set up for Readiness Academy or Summer Bridge in advance, but it's not something that's always available. I don't know if you want to add on, Melody.
Yeah, we additionally do our best to we have a specific catch-all flyer that we translate every year so that students and their families can access the information about the Seattle Promise program and be connected to the website, which can be translated using a toggle into other languages. Related to supporting students who have visual or hearing impairment. Once a student is on site with us, we can work with our access/disability service offices to provide interpretation for students as needed, or guides for students as needed. Once they enter into the college system, accessing those supports, the supports are still available and accessible. It's a different process to access those supports for students. So as soon as we know that we have a student who will need that type of support, we are actively, proactively, and intensively working with that student, their family, and then also our access and disability services offices to make sure that every step along the way, people are prepared and ready, and like expectations are set and managed. And we want the student to know what they're getting into and what they're not. And we also want to make sure that the supports are, there and available for the student, from as early as possible, day one. And sometimes that just requires some logistical coordination and support that we try to provide to students. So the sooner that we know, the better. We've really tried to make the Promise application something that allows and encourages students to let us know what do they need or what do they anticipate needing when they are making this transition from high school to college. And once they're in college, what are some of your concerns that you have about earning your degree or what college is going to look like for you, so that we can work with them to anticipate what these needs might be, and help provide support to them along the way, as individualized as possible.
Great, thank you. Nathaniel, you had a question?
Well, so full disclosure, I am a part-time community college instructor as part of my job. So I just wanted to share, because there hasn't been much talk about the instructors, but we're the ones who have daily contact with the student, right? So I was just want to kind of share my perspective from that angle, which is, what it looks like from my end is that if a student goes through the entire process of getting an accommodation through OSS, and if that student decides to disclose to me each quarter, like the student, to protect the student's privacy, they have to affirmatively disclose to each instructor about their accommodations each quarter. So if the student decides to, oh, sorry, that's our Office of Student Support. It's kind of our, the name changes every year. So, but we do have like most of the colleges have an office like this. So then I get a list of supports for the students, and it's very generic. There are about 4 or 5 different supports, such as a quiet room for exams, extra time for exams, a note taker, those same supports for every student. So as an instructor, I get no information about like what the student's disability is. So from my perspective, it could be very, very helpful if you can loop in the instructor. A lot of students don't want to go to office hours or something like that, but I don't know, sometimes I feel like I'm the bus driver. They want to sit at the back of the bus and just, avoid me or whatever. But getting engaged with the instructor, a lot of us would like to be more supportive if we could be. You'd be surprised just in our little biology and chemistry faculty how many parents there are who and to provide some support that's a little bit more individualized and not the same generic supports that just go out to everybody. Yeah, and I'm want to really acknowledge, like, sometimes it seems like from my institution's point of view, and I may think we try, but if we are in compliance with the ADA and the IDEA and Title IX, a lot of times the college's attitude is, okay, we're in compliance, we've done everything we need to do, versus my personal view, which is, okay, that's a minimum national, that's the lowest level that we will accept as a national standard. Actually, to be good, you'd have to be like up here. So, but the college's attitude can sometimes be, hey, we've done everything that's in the ADA. So, um, okay, so I'll cut myself off there. But anyway, I just, if you loop in the instructor,
Yeah.
and I know
Nath-
it's not ideal, but
No, Nathaniel, this is Sherilyn. Nathaniel, I appreciate that, because what you're speaking of is our overall ableism, right? And so instead of just kind of meeting a low bar, what we want to do is to make it a successful venture for all involved. That, part of the diversity of voices at the table means that you've got voices who speak in a variety of different ways. So I appreciate that. And Sala, to your point, work seems to be landing on students, on families. That seems to be a theme a lot in our meetings, in terms of the advocacy work falling on the students and the families. It is interesting to think about kind of almost that on-off switch of, you hit 18 and now you need to be really advocating for yourself. And depending on where you are, I had the one kid, I knew about all those things that were going on Trinity, but she was like, she had it covered. So she's like, oh yeah, I got this. And then I'm talking to my counselor, and which was great for me. And but I know that's just not all an opportunity.
Hi, Sherilyn. My hand doesn't.
Sure, go ahead.
My hand is not there. I'm having the same problem Yana has.
Cheryl, go ahead.
I do want to confirm what Nathaniel was saying. My daughter did Seattle Promise in the early years, like she was a graduate from Ingram in 2018. So she started at North Seattle Community College, and she planned to be a transfer student, so she did the sciences, marine biology. Well, the biology, they didn't have marine biology, but that's what she ended up doing. But yeah, it was yeah, the accommodations were kind of bare bones. She did like the fact that she could just email the teacher, the accommodation she had, but it was challenging because she was a kid with a lot of anxiety. She ADHD anxiety component. So it was really hard for her to make that, like, I'm gonna go talk to the teacher, like that was like the hardest part. And she didn't want me to be too involved because she wanted to kind of handle things on her own. And it is hard to loop in the teacher, and I kept just trying to tell her, they're people, they want to help you. And but I think she had a lot of trauma from high school, and not having her accommodations met and having to battle for everything. And I think she just sort of felt like really intimidated, and her anxiety just wouldn't let her engage with the teachers that much. And I don't know if there's a solution to that really, other than somehow, I mean, like, the teachers can only do so much to some degree with that, unless they have some kind of meetings for kids with anxiety to, to let them know it's okay to go talk to the teacher, it's fine.
Yeah, maybe there would be another opportunity for a big advocacy push there. And I think a lot of this is also, I mean, if we had greater inclusion in K through 12, we would also have maybe more acknowledgement of these various issues, and then it would be kind of more matter of fact rather than a little bit of the special occasion. Sala, did you have another question? I guess not. She's just, I appreciate you elevating that gap. I know there's more to the agenda, but I'm curious how those in the foster system navigate this. Thank you for so much thinking about all this. Yes, yeah, again, the multiple different aspects that a young person brings to secondary education, from the disabilities and the different life circumstances and the economics or the language or the lack of knowledge in terms of the schools, colleges overall. I do really appreciate, we've now been going on for a while, and I so appreciate this feedback. Are there any last questions or comments, either from those attending or from the three presenters? Okay then. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. I think we're going to stop this recording.